Hello students, welcome back. Today we will look at the poem The Patriot, composed by Robert Browning. Robert Browning was an English poet and playwright whose mastery of the dramatic monologue made him one of the foremost poets of the Victorian age. His works are known for their irony, dark humor, characterization, and social commentary. Some of his well-known works include My Last Duchess, Pippa Passes, Porphyria's Lover, Dramatis Personae, Dramatic Lyrics, etc. Now this poem, The Patriot, is believed to have been influenced by Robert Browning's experiences of the rise and fall of heroes in Italy's premature struggle to free herself from Austria, which lasted from the year 1841 to 49. And this poem, The Patriot, is in the form of a dramatic monologue. Now, in a dramatic monologue, you need to know that the main character is the only one talking here, narrating his tale, which is one of dramatic rise and fall. This is during a specific situation at a critical moment. Whatever the character speaks reveals his temperament and character. As we study the poem, we will see that all these points are inherent in this poem. Now this poem, The Patriot, is the story of a man who was a hero a year before, felicitated and celebrated by the people of his town. But exactly after a year, he becomes a zero, a villain, or you can say a condemned traitor. This is in sharp contrast to what had happened a year ago, when he had been hailed by the people of his town as a hero, and he was in a way acknowledged as being godlike. But exactly after a year, he is being taken by the same people, being led to the gallows to be hanged. The poem therefore reflects the fact that life is uncertain and it can change dramatically. In the case of the Patriot, life changed within the span of a year. It can change within a shorter duration too. And so people are the ones who celebrate a person, who can make a person a hero, but the same people drag the person down to nothing. Maybe because the person was not able to live up to the expectations of the people. We have certain examples, like we have the example of Julius Caesar, the great Roman conqueror, who was celebrated by the people, but finally he was assassinated by his senators. Then we have the example of Socrates, the wisest man in Greece. He was also celebrated, but he was assassinated by the city of Athens on charges of corrupting the youth of that city. So many people have witnessed the reversal of fortune. And before starting the poem, you need to know about few things. The first thing is that the arrival of the Patriot in the town is matched as if with the entry of Jesus Christ into Jerusalem. Jesus was hailed as a savior by the people, but later followed by similar reversal of fortune. Jesus was crucified by the people. Another thing that you need to remember is that in the third stanza there is reference to the Greek mythology, and the story of Icarus and Daedalus you need to know. The reference is to the story of Icarus and Daedalus. Now Daedalus was a master craftsman, and he and his son Icarus were imprisoned by King Minos of Crete in the labyrinth, within the walls of his own creation, the labyrinth is the maze, and the father and the son, that is Daedalus and Icarus, would have died of starvation in captivity over there. So Daedalus, being a master craftsman, he thought of a plan. He made wings of feathers and wax for himself and for his son too. And before escaping, he warned his son Icarus that he should not fly too closer to the sun because the wings were made of wax. But once when they escaped, then Icarus became too excited and he went on flying higher and higher, and out of ecstasy, in that state of ecstasy, he flew too closer to the sun. And as a result, the wings which were made of wax melted and Icarus plunged into the sea and died. So this refers to the vaulting ambition. So that when we do the poem, you will come across. Another thing, the themes that we find in this poem, the very first one is public's fickleness. Browning wants to highlight through this poem that the love, respect and honor that one receives is momentary and subject to erratic changes, subject to whimsical crowd mentality. In the case of the Patriot, the same people, they offered him a grand welcome, they acknowledged him as being godlike, but then the same people flung stones or hurled stones at him and dragged him down to nothing. Then the second theme is the theme of rise and fall of glory. So the poem depicts the theme of sudden rise and fall of glory of man. Within a span of 1 year, the Patriot experiences both the love and hatred of his people. So once the person who was their beloved hero now becomes a condemned traitor. Third theme which we have is faith in God. Browning's message in the poem is one of faith in God and optimism. Towards the end of the poem, that is in the last stanza, the Patriot expresses his complete devotion and faith in God. And he feels that it is better to move away from this world because this world has not rewarded him, and he would be rewarded by God because God is just, and so he would be safer in God's abode. And the poem thus reflects Browning's faith in God, that God is in his heaven and all is well with the world. Now let's start the poem. The Patriot by Robert Browning. The poem starts with a retrospective tone, as the first two stanzas are in the past tense, when the Patriot is reminiscing or recalling his glorious past. Then he goes on to his unheroic present. The poem has an ironic tone. It was roses, roses all the way, with myrtle mixed in my path like mad. The house roofs seemed to heave and sway. The church spires flamed, such flags they had, a year ago on this very day. So the Patriot, recalling his glorious past, says, it was roses, roses all the way, with myrtle mixed in my path like mad. That his homecoming to his town was celebrated by his people. And when he has come to his town, the people had thrown roses and myrtles in his path. They had strewn his path with roses and myrtles. Myrtle is an evergreen shrub with white flowers. Why roses? Rose is a symbol of love and affection. So that shows that the people express their love and affection towards him by strewing his path with roses and myrtles all the way. That refers to the complete devotion of the people to their favorite hero. Now here you can see the alliteration with myrtle mixed in my path like mad. Myrtle M, mixed M, my M, and mad M. So observe the alliteration here. And then we have the alliteration in the line. The church spires flamed, such flags they had. Flamed and flags. Furthermore, you have metaphor. The use of roses symbolizes people's love and affection towards the patriot. The house roof seemed to heave and sway. Heave means to lift and sway means to move from side to side. So the crowds had gathered on the rooftops, and that is why it created an image of heaving and swaying. Here the house roofs have been personified. There is personification in this line where the house roofs seem to heave and sway because of the large number of people who were jostling, who were craning their necks to see or catch a glimpse of their favorite hero passing through the streets. So that gave an image of the house roofs as if the house roofs were heaving and swaying. The church spires flamed, such flags they had. So the pointed structures of the churches, the towers, the church spires flamed. They appeared as if they were on fire. That implies that the people had put lot of flags in flaming colors, in flaming bright colors on the church spires. That made them appear as if the church spires were on fire. A year ago on this very day, underline on this very day. That is important. On this very day, because he is actually establishing in the first stanza that he is talking about something that happened exactly 365 days before on this very day. So there is a sense of nationalistic fervor, pride and gratitude which can be seen from the manner in which the patriot was welcomed. The air broke into a mist with bells. The old walls rocked with the crowd and cries. Had I said, good folk, mere noise repels, but give me your son from yonder skies. They had answered, and afterward, what else? So the air broke into a mist with bells. So he was offered a splendid welcome, and the patriot says that the bells were ringing everywhere. There was so much noise due to the celebration. The bells were ringing everywhere and they were creating so much noise that it seemed that the air got misty due to the sound of bells. Misty is hazy. So the old walls rocked with the crowd and cries. The people were shouting, crying out, and because they were happy. They were expressing their extreme happiness. And the old walls rocked. Old walls, that also refers to the town being old and like cluttered, and old walls seem to rock because of the number of people, the crowd and the shouts of joy. Here walls have been personified. Had I said, good folk, mere noise repels. So he recalls that if at that time when he was at such a great height of glory, when his popularity was at such a great height, if he would have asked the people that this noise was okay but it was repulsive, do something else, get me the sun from yonder skies, get me the sun from the distant sky, then the people would have readily and willingly agreed to get the sun for him. So here the sun, again we have the metaphor that the sun is a symbol of ultimate power, glory. He asks the people for the sun as it is the ultimate symbol of power. So then the people would have replied, and afterward what else? Now here this and afterward what else is a hyperbolic expression, because getting the sun from the distant sky is something impossible. And then they would have said afterward, what else? So that is hyperbolic. So the people were ready to follow his commands, his orders. Such was his glorious past. Now coming to the third stanza. Alack, it was I who leaped at the sun, to give it my loving friends to keep. Not man could do, have I left undone. And you see my harvest, what I reap. This very day, now a year is run. So alack is an exclamation of sadness, regret, dismay. So he says, now he comes back to the present condition and he says, he is regretting. He says, oh, it was me who had leaped at the sun, who tried to do the impossible for his people. But in doing that, maybe he did something wrong that harmed them. And that is why they are now considering him as a traitor. So here we have the reference to the story of Daedalus and Icarus. Out of his vaulting ambition, he became so overconfident that he thought of doing the impossible for his people. And in doing that, he did something that annoyed the people. To give it my loving friends to keep. So here this verse is satiric, and he says, just before this he had mentioned that it was he who had, if he would have asked the people to get the sun, to fetch the sun for him, they would have done, but he did not. And then in this third stanza, he is only saying that it was me who tried to fetch the sun for my people, to do something impossible for my people. Not man could do, have I left undone. And he says that whatever could be done by man, I have done. And just see the results. And you see my harvest, what I reap this very day, now a year is run. You must be aware of the meaning of the word harvest. In biology and geography, you must have studied something you get at the end of the crop season. That is, if you sow paddy, you harvest rice after 3 months. So here harvest means the result. And he says that, and you see my harvest, what I reap this very day, now a year is run. So he means to say that this is the result that he has got. That whatever he did for his people, the impossible things he tried to do for his people, as a result of that, he is being led to the gallows to be hanged. So this is the harvest that what I reap. So here again you have a metaphor where Patriot's deeds have been referred to as harvest, and the consequences have been referred to as reaping. Moving on to the next stanza. There's nobody on the housetops now. The poem is full of contrasting imagery, and you contrast this with what had happened in the first stanza. The house roofs were full of people, they were crowded, and here the housetops are empty. There's nobody on the housetops now, just a palsied few at the windows set. For the best of the sight is all allow, at the shambles gate, or better yet, by the very scaffold's foot I trow. So he says now there is nobody on the housetops. After a span of 1 year, on that very day, there is nobody on the housetops now. Just a palsied few. Palsied few, the people who are suffering from the ailment in which the people get paralyzed and they cannot move. So usually the old aged people, the elderly people. So only few people who are paralyzed, palsied, they are sitting at the windows. For the best of the sight is all allow at the shambles gate. Shambles gate, the place where public execution takes place. Or better yet, by the very scaffold's foot. Scaffold, a raised platform used for public execution. I trow, I believe. So he says, because the people of the town have all gathered at the shambles gate to see him being hanged. And some of them, in order to get clear view of the public hanging, are standing near to the scaffold. So he is telling about something very negative, very sinister that is going to happen. And the contrast in fortunes Browning is pointing out the contrast in the energy of what happened 365 days back to complete stillness and complete lack of energy. Now there is complete stillness. The house roofs are empty. In the beginning, that is in the very first stanza, people were shouting with joy. The house roofs were heaving and swaying with crowds of people. I go in the rain and more than needs, a rope cuts both my wrists behind. So he says that I go in the rain and more than needs, a rope cuts both my wrists behind. He's walking in the rain and his hands are tied behind his back. His wrists are tied so tightly that blood is coming out of his wrists. And I think by the feel my forehead bleeds. Why he thinks? Because he cannot touch and see. His hands are tied behind his back. I think by the feel that since people are hurling stones at him, they are pelting stones at him, he can feel the blood pouring from his forehead. And that is why he says, by the feel my forehead bleeds, for they fling whoever has a mind, stones at me for my years' misdeeds. So he is saying that whoever has a thinking mind and is aware that I have done something wrong or feels that I have done something wrong, throw stones at me. So this is the first time that the patriot admits that he has done something wrong. Although from his perspective he did whatever was possible for a man to do for his people. But in doing too much, he maybe caused harm to them, and that is why that made the people angry and annoyed, and finally he has been condemned. Now here we have pathetic fallacy. Now what is pathetic fallacy? Is a literary term for attributing human emotions and conduct to all aspects of nature. So the use of pathetic fallacy in the sentence, I go in the rain and more than needs, adds to the depressed mood and could be seen as a sign of the speaker's inner crisis and sadness. Some examples of pathetic fallacy are like, clouds are spoken as if clouds are indifferent, clouds are sullen, rocks are indifferent, that manner. So that is pathetic fallacy. Now, poet seems to operate at the literal and metaphorical level as well here in this stanza. It might be raining, but it may also refer to the rain of stones. Now here we see that the rain is symbolic of a number of things in this stanza, fifth stanza. The patriot gets wet by the rain, losing his dignity. Also, it can be viewed as the rain washes the patriot clean, representing his innocence. This also works to create a tense atmosphere. Last stanza. Thus I entered and thus I go. In triumphs people have dropped down dead. Paid by the world, what dost thou owe? Me? God might question. Now instead, 'tis God shall repay, I am safer so. So the very first line, thus I entered and thus I go, we have antithesis here. Antithesis is a person or thing that is the direct opposite of someone or something else. So he says that thus I entered and thus I go. So this is the manner in which I entered and this is the manner in which I am going out. What does this imply? That when he had entered, he was celebrated, he was offered a grand welcome. But the current situation is just the opposite of that. The manner in which he is going, his dignity has been lost and he is being publicly hanged. So this is the manner in which he is going. So that is just the opposite of what or of what had happened a year back when he had arrived in that town. In triumphs, people have dropped down dead. Dropped down dead, we have alliteration here. In triumphs, in victories, people have lost their lives. After getting the fruits of victory also, many people have died. Paid by the world, what does the owe? Dust means do and thou you. So then when such people die, God says to them that you have already been paid by the world. So what do you owe me? But in his case, he feels that he has not been paid by the world in a just manner. He doesn't deserve this kind of treatment. So he wants to tell himself that he would be better off going away from these people who have not rewarded him justly. So it's better that he is going away from this world, because he would be going to a place where God rules and God is just. So he would be safer in God's hands. So this last stanza indulges in positive thinking, has a note of optimism, and echoes Browning's philosophy, his complete faith in God. And the patriot feels that God would be much more just. He will be safer in God's abode. By referring to God as God's place as a safer place, someone who is just, he is actually indirectly accusing the people of his town of being unjust. So the poem ends on an optimistic note, and this poem we find is as relevant in today's scenario as it was in the 19th century, because it is the people who celebrate a person, who raise a person to that high pedestal, and when they feel that the person is not able to live up to their expectations, they are the ones who are quick to pronounce judgment. They do not wait for the facts to find out the actual facts, but they are quick in pronouncing the judgment, and they bring him down to nothing. So they are the ones who make a person a hero, and then they are the ones who make the same person a traitor. So that's all for today. Thank you.